That's awesome. Well, we're going to get into A Plain View, which was your second book, which you plan to do another printing of coming up,
Yeah,
right?
I think end of 2021, spring of 2022, if I can get my ducks in a row.
All right.
Yeah, this is all in early 2017 with a 4x5 camera and Kodak 4x5 color films. I roamed Texas over the course of about a month off and on when I was living in North Texas at the time. And I made about 300 exposures. I had been to Texas before on various photo road trips before that. And I knew of Highway 287, which is one of my favorite highways out there. And I thought, well, I live here now. I want to go roam the state. And it's a big state. And I absolutely loved it. And I loved the film choice. I was very drawn to Robbie Mueller's cinematography in the film Paris, Texas, which of course is a masterpiece. And Robbie Mueller is a phenomenal cinematographer. And so that was always in my mind when I was thinking about the Texas thing. And I knew that I would be able to find the feeling that you get when you watch Paris, Texas, those opening scenes of Travis walking through the desert and arriving in Terlingua. And so I knew that I wanted a color palette, but I knew that I wanted a certain kind of flatter, more muted, kind of subdued palette. And so you give the film some good overexposure. And I used an old 1941 Kodak Ektar uncoated 127 millimeter lens, and that gives it a nice flatness as well. And so I just kind of roamed Texas and ended up in many a small town that I'd never been to, and made a series of photos. And then eventually the next year put out a book called A Plain View. So it's been a couple of years now since that book came out. And these are some examples of the 4x5 photos from Texas. It's very, very, very quiet, very beautiful, empty, very cinematic little towns. A lot of places that resemble film locations or something you might see out of a film like Paris, Texas.
I know, it's amazing that you were able to photograph these places, and it's like there's sign of existing life somewhat, but there are not a lot of people around, not a lot of cars. So, I mean, have you gone to these places when you're on the road and then decided to change plans because it's just not what you expected? Or do you just kind of go with the flow? And
that's the beautiful thing about roaming America, is that you never know what to expect and it's never disappointing. There's always odd things like this bush tree growing around a street light, and a lawnmower just sitting there unattended with that beautiful bright John Deere green and yellow, and the red fence here matching the red truck in the suburbs of Denton, Texas, and this church with these two green house doors on it. And there's always those odd things that you see when you're kind of out there. This was a dusk shot in La Mesa, Texas. Just these empty street scenes at night, long exposures. A lot of that lens flare comes from the uncoated lens and the long exposure time. But yeah, just again, I can't speak enough to how enthusiastic I still am to this day for the road trip.
yeah, you can tell you're very passionate about it.